Okay, welcome back to the channel. Time for a rematch, round two. I had a good number of comments talking about how the 30-06 is shooting flatter than the 270 and how, since there's been some updated specs, that the 30-06 can handle up to 65,000 psi. I'm like, okay, well, since we're doing that on a computer program and it's not going to hurt anything, let's try that. So I put together two ballistic charts for the 30-06, kept the other one using the same using the same parameters, 65,000 psi, ram shot hunter, same elevation, increments, and all that stuff. This time, because I'm using again the 200 yard zero, I skipped 100 and 200 yards. There's no reason to go into that. So here it is. Is the 30-06 flatter than the 270 when using the same weight bullets with a decent BC? Well, the answer is no. But is it enough to really matter? Also, no. This actually surprised me. And that's why I appreciate the comments and the information that y'all have. Share it, because I'm learning as well, and I want to be able to learn from others who are a little bit more experienced than me in different avenues of life. So I like being able to have these interactions. So, for one, using 65,000 psi with the 190 grain ABLR, it does have more drop than the 150 grain ABLR in the 270 because it also weighs 40 more grains. So it already has more gravitational pull on it to come down. So going back to the 270, here are the specs. And we're just going to go straight into like the far end, which is 700 and 800 yards. At 700 yards, you have 2,146 feet per second with 1,533 foot-pounds of energy and a drop of 84.7 inches. And at 800 yards, you have 2,035 feet per second with 1,379 foot-pounds with 121.5 inches of drop. So, and I'm going to go with this comparison first because I'm going to start with the similar BCs, this being a 0591, and the 190 grain ABLR has a BC of 0.597. So it's as close as you're going to get. It's not enough to really argue over. But here's the thing. When we get into the ballistics, here it is at 700 yards. You have 2,014 feet per second with 1,711 foot-pounds, 95.9 inches of drop. So you're talking like 11 inches of difference. But the one thing that was impressive to me is this at 800 yards. 1,908 feet per second, 1,536 foot-pounds, and 137.2 inches of drop. So you have more drop, but whereas before going with the 60,000 psi limit as opposed to the 65,000 psi limit, you went from being a max, I'll pull up this one because I kept it, where your basically max effective range on elk would be 500 yards. It is now out to 800 yards. That puts it in 300 Win Mag territory. That's impressive. That's awesome. I see why y'all like it. And I've never had any issues with the 30-06 in particular. It's never really appealed to me. Actually, as a matter of fact, my first deer I ever killed was with a 30-06. I just ended up in a 270 and had really good experiences hunting deer with it, and it did a great job. I see why y'all love the 30-06 though. It's a really good cartridge, and I have nothing but respect for it. So we're doing this comparison, but it is kind of cool to get this kind of information because I like to be able to learn along with everyone else. Now, is it the same trajectory? No, it's actually significantly flatter shooting out of the 270 at that range. Are the energies the same? No, with a difference of, not quite 200 foot-pounds, like 150, about 150 foot-pounds of energy difference. That's a good jump because, you're going from 1379 to 1536. So it's a significant gap. But, would I be taking the 270 and hunting with it out to, 800 yards? Not really. That's not me personally. But it's kind of cool to see what the cartridge is capable of. Same thing over here with the 30-06. That's a really cool learning bell for me, be able to see that. Is it going to be as flat? No. But is it a problem? Also no. It all comes down to what you're comfortable with. If you have the scope that can dial, that's not a significant jump in inches. Being that of only like 16 inches like 16 inches of elevation difference, not a big deal. Most scopes are going to have the MOA or mils to be able to turn that pretty easily. So that's not really an issue. This comes down to a matter of personal preference of what you feel like dialing for. But that's a really good result. Now here's where it gets kind of really cool. Is the 30-06 with a 150 grain AccuBond, and I went with this because it has for being a more traditional 150 grain bullet, it has a pretty solid BC for practical hunting and most things. The long range stuff is not really needed. A BC of 0.435 is going to kill everything that you're going to want to do. It's going to be fairly flat, especially if you're keeping it out to only 400 yards or even 500 yards. This kind of did surprise me is, yes, the 30-06 within 500 yards, actually make that even 600 yards, is actually flatter by a little bit. Because out to 500 yards, or out of their 600 yards, excuse me, you still have only 54.7 inches of drop with the 30-06 with that. Because here's look at your muzzle velocity, 3,176. So loading it to absolute max pressures, you can push this nearly 3,200 feet per second. That's smoking fast. As opposed to pushing it with this, which is 3,015. Now, is that a slouch? No, it is not a slouch. But it's also like 160 feet per second slower. That's a significant gap. And that's really cool. I think that's really cool. That says a lot about the 30 cals, and I understand why guys love them. And I get it. So here's where you start seeing a difference, though. So at 600 yards, you have 1,533 foot-pounds, and I'm having that same energy at 700. So because of the BC difference between the two, go over here again, the difference between the BCs, the 270 is maintaining its energy further. Because when you get to 800 yards, you're looking at 1,379 foot-pounds and 121 and a half inches of drop. At 800 yards with the 30-06 of that 150 grain AccuBond, you're at 1,142 foot-pounds of energy and 123.7 inches of drop. So you're literally talking 2.25 inches more of drop. These are basically tied. Okay? The only real advantage that the 270 has at that range is going to be its energy. You're talking over 200 foot-pounds more. Like 237 foot-pounds of energy more. That is significant. So, adding all factors into consideration, the 270 with the same weight bullet as a 30-06 while starting off slower by quite a gap does make up for it out to 800 yards significantly, because here's the final velocity. 2,035 feet per second as opposed to 1852. You're talking 180 feet per second, roughly, difference. So here's what's nuts. Because of the BC difference of that bullet, and the other thing is you can look through whatever catalog you want. Most 150 grain 30 cals are not going to have much better than a .45 for its BC. That's about as high as you're going to get. So I picked this because it's a very common bullet. And it has the same weight, so it fits the criteria. But even though it starts out at 160 feet per second faster, it ends up 180 feet per second slower. So even though the inches are there, this bullet starts losing its momentum pretty quick, whereas this maintains it really well. So again, the data is here. You know, is the 30-06 in any of its configurations really going to be flatter shooting than the 270? No. Sorry, guys. The answer is no. Not because I'm making it up, but because the numbers are in front of you. At the 800-yard mark, you're still 2.25 inches, more in drop. Is that enough to really matter? No, and I'm not going to argue that it is, because it's really not. But for the simplicity of the video, we're going to focus on the question. Is it flatter? No, the 270 is still flatter, even with the same weight bullet. My next video, I'm going to do a short King's Grudge match between the 308 and the 7mm 08 because y'all asked for it. I did a survey. Please come back, tune in, see it. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Hit the bell button for the notifications so that way you can keep up with me. I really look forward to it next time. Bye.